Yo, what's up, people? Hey, I just want to talk to y'all. I just want to talk to y'all about some things. Um, you know, I had a I had a very intimate talk with one of my family members, a cousin of mine. Um, I haven't talked to her in years. I haven't talked to a lot of my family in years. Um, but me and her, we had a very intimate talk, and I found out, you know, I found out, that the same thing that I went through as a child, she went through the same thing. Just and you know, one thing that I want to one thing that I want to address is this is that your child or your children are a reflection of who you are. Okay, your child or your children is a reflection of who you are. In most cases that's true, right? In most cases, um, you know, your your child or your children are going to have characteristic traits and attributes that you have because it's passed down in your genetic code. It's passed down in your DNA. You know, and a lot of a lot of us a lot of us we wonder why a lot of our children are so dysfunctional in society. Wonder why our children are, you know, some of them are menaces to society, right? Well, the reason why that is because they haven't had the the proper nurturing that they needed as a child. You um, one thing that parents make the mistake of doing is thinking that you know just because you provide food, clothing, and shelter for your children, that's enough. Well, that's not enough. A child must be nurtured psychologically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, as well as physically, right? I saw this movie yesterday called Interreflections, and one of the things they addressed on that movie was how poverty affects the health of not only adults but also children, right? Let's talk about genetic coding and DNA. How how that affects a child. So say you have you know say you have parents, right? These parents um are are psychologically and mentally, emotionally, and spiritually well, right? You know, they may practice meditation, they may practice yoga, they may practice healthy eating habits. They may practice, things like um, what would you call it? Philanthropy. I think I think that's the word. Um, you know, just giving to others, kind-hearted, compassionate, understanding, and they work for the betterment of mankind, right? They follow their passions. They do what they love. They travel. And things of that nature. They're living their best lives, right? And then one day they decide, well, let's have children, right? So they have a child, right? And in this psychological and mental and spiritually and emotional, physical, healthy state of being, they're financially healthy, just healthy all around. Um, in most cases, 9 times out of 10, that child is going to be happy. That child is going to be joyful. That child is going to um, um, grow up in a nurturing and very spiritually advanced environment. Therefore, that child is going to be be spiritually advanced. That child is going to be emotionally balanced, psychologically and mentally well. And in most cases, that child is going to grow up and follow his or her passions, and and they they may even have very financial stability. If that child is educated in economics and have economic intelligence, right? As opposed to a child who is raised in dysfunction, you know being abused, right? you know being abused psychologically and spiritually and emotionally. That child may have been molested as a child and neglected the proper protection and nurturing and healing that was needed for that child to be a functional member of society, right? That child is going to grow up dysfunctional. Their soul is going to be murdered. There, there's in psychology they call it soul murder, which is a term that's used to describe a, uh, a child who has grown to be an adult who has been abused to the point that they are missing they're missing a deep connection to themselves. They're missing a deep connection to their soul. Their soul is dead, right? Um, and in most cases, you know, though those are your menaces to society. Those are your killers. Those are your your murderers. And you know they're called monsters. All right. You have those type of children. So your children are a reflection of who you are. You know, you might say, well, why is this child so bad? Why is my child so bad? It's because you're bad. Why is my, you know, you know, a lot of people, they'll look at a child who has expressed that, they're depressed, you know, and they'll, uh, they'll ask that child, well, what do you have to be depressed about? You know, what does a child have to be depressed about? Well, if a child is growing up in a household where their mother is constantly worried about how she's going to pay the bills, how she's going to pay the rent, how she's going to provide shelter for their child, if she's going to have enough to feed that child for the day or whatever have you, then what happens is that child is going to feel like they're a burden on that parent. This is going to result in you know a state of depression. You know, and one thing that people made the mistake of doing is you know as adults, we have this thing that children are to be seen and not heard. Um, in in many societies, children are more like what what word can I use? Children are more like an item. You know, children are more. Their children are more objectified in a lot of societies. They're like items. They're like objects. And they they are fair game for all kinds of abuse. Children, for the most part, in a lot of societies, they're not looked at as living, breathing beings that have feelings. Okay, and they're not really looked at as important. by many in society, like, you know, you know, they're game for all kinds of abuse. Like I was saying, verbally, physically, mentally, spiritually, you know, psychologically. They're game for abuse. All right, and that has to stop, because that's why you have so many children growing up, you know, suicidal, such as myself. I am suicidal. I do contemplate suicide a lot. That's because as a child I was abused, and you know, although I'm going through the healing process, um, you know, it's still, it's still hard. It's still because I think about the situation that I'm in, you know, and I think about you know how abuse has affected me on an individual level, right? Being molested as a child, and then neglected the proper protection and nurturing and healing as a child that I needed from my mother, and did not get that, right? You know, you think about things like that, and you think about how it affects the you know people's mental state. Um, there's a part of the brain that governs one's decision making, called the amygdala, right? And the amygdala is, what governs one's capabilities to make um, healthy decisions, healthy choices, right? When a child when a child is abused, when a child is sexually abused or psychologically abused, mentally abused, and emotionally abused all their lives, what ends up happening is the amygdala um, becomes underdeveloped, and that child grows into an adult, and uh, who whose decision making is not healthy in most cases, right? Um, you know, and a lot of times, I sit, and well, sometimes I sit, and I think, man, like what kind of man would I be today if my mother if my mother was more protective of me, you know, was more protective, was less afraid, you know, to protect me, from this predator who molested me. What kind of man would I have been if I had a positive a positive male figure in my life? What kind of man would I, be? What kind of man would I become? And then, on the flip side of that, on the flip side of that, I think, well, um, all of this happened. All of this happened, to build my character. You know, all of this happened for my own soul, my own soul's evolution. You know, but it's hard to. It's not easy. You know, it's not easy to to keep that outlook on life. You know, you know, a lot of times, I look back and I think about the decisions that I've made. The bad decisions that I've made in life. You know, and where those decisions have gotten me today. And I think, man, if I knew the things that I know now, I would have done a lot of things a lot more differently. You know, um, but shit happens, right? You know, um, not saying that I can't get out of the situation that I'm in. There's plenty of opportunity. Right now you know, I'm working, with 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 somebody, on some music, some music projects, and hopefully, I'll be getting some employment soon, but I just can't help but to think, man, I could be a lot more far, a lot more further than I am right now, had I made the right decisions in life. But you know, that's life, That's what it is. Um, One thing that I want to encourage, you, future parents to do, right, is before you bring children into the world, into this world, right? Make sure make sure you do your shadow work. Make sure you do your shadow work. Make sure you confront your demons. Make sure you heal. Okay? Make sure you are living your best life. Make sure you are psychologically healthy, you're mentally healthy, you're spiritually healthy, you're emotionally healthy, you are financially, healthy, you're physically healthy, you're practicing healthy decision making, you have developed a nurturing and kind, compassionate, and understanding disposition, right? Make sure you develop things that's going to produce and manifest a a a functional child. Okay, do that. Do that. Don't bring your child into an unhealthy environment. Don't bring your child into an impoverished lifestyle or environment. Don't do that because that's a form of abuse. You know, you bring your child into an impoverished environment, into an impoverished household. That's a form of abuse. It's a form of psychological abuse and emotional and spiritual abuse, and also physical, because you cannot feed your child, food that is physically healthy for them. You know, develop emotional intelligence, develop financial intelligence. Understand psychology, study psychology. Things of that nature, right? Be willing to allow your child the space to express themselves and talk to you about anything and everything. If your child is angry, even if your child is angry at you, allow your child to express that. It's going to hurt your ego. Of course it is, you know, because you're dealing with domestic politics, relationship between parent child relationship, and sometimes that parent, it gets in the way, right? Because you're thinking, I brought you into this world, you should be thanking me. But what you forget is that your child is a gift to you. Your child is a gift to you. It is your obligation to provide that child a safe space for them to be highly expressive, to be highly intelligent, to be functional, and able to um, exist as a functional member in society. And if your child is not allowed the space to express their frustrations, their anger, their sadness, and their depression, and their anxiety, things of that nature, if they're not allowed a safe space to express those things, then you're stifling them. You're stifling their energy. And energy is not to be stifled. It is to be free and allowed to be expressive. You know? So that's pretty much all, I want to say, because I don't want this video to be too long. Um, but yeah, please, parents and parents to be, have more kindness and compassion, with your children. Be more protective of your children. Okay? Um, Before you have children, um, bring your child into a financially stable household. Okay? So your child, you know, won't, you know, have to worry about anything. Give your child the best experience in life that you can give them. Okay? All right. Peace.